on his way. Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way.
Mountain Murders is an Appalachian true crime podcast. Some content may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
We say fuck a lot.
Hey y'all, welcome back to Mountain Murders.
I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
How are you this week, Dylan?
Oh my gosh, the Easter Bunny.
Are you the Easter Bunny?
No, I would be a fat Easter Bunny.
You're like a deranged Easter Bunny.
Yeah, I'd be like a Donnie Darko Easter Bunny.
You would just break in and eat all the candy.
Yeah, I'd be like,
be honest.
Screw these kids.
Steal their baskets.
Take their chocolate. You know, I think that scam they ran on us as kids, that whole thing about razor blades and the apples at Halloween and all that bull, was just to get access to our candy.
Parents?
Yep.
You think parents, it's a conspiracy against children? Our parents lied to us?
Yes, because I did the same thing. I looked through my children's candy and took out the good stuff and just told them all the rest of it was safe.
Okay.
Did you
I
never
like this
do?
scam.
You never did that.
No.
Oh, how are you?
I'm not bad. I do have a complaint before we get started today.
I know what this is.
Okay, so this weekend we have consumed a couple of new horror movies. And I have to say, whoever's writing the scripts must think we're just a bunch of dumbasses or something, because these fucking movies are so bad. So bad.
The dialogue is terrible, which
the plots are just, I don't even know, man. They're so unbelievably stupid.
Yeah, and you need a little bit of cheese and horror, and it's, you know, and not being that well written is okay, but this is a whole nother level.
Specifically, I am talking about Netflix's new horror movie, Choose or Die.
Yeah, that classic we watched tonight.
It's about an obscure 1980s survival computer game that you know, you get trapped kind of in this computer games world.
Yeah, and it's one of those choose your narrative games.
Right.
Right, you always have the choice. And
seems like it has a bit of a Saw kind of influence, maybe.
Yeah, I could see that.
I don't know. It was so bad.
That was not good.
28% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Well, I don't always agree with the Rotten Tomatoes score, but on this one, that might be a little high.
It might be a little high. Yeah, it was an absolute turd of a film. Robert Englund was the voice in the film of the game. I guess I don't know, would you call that a narrator? I have no idea. But anyway, I can't believe that he signed on to make such a shit film.
Well, I think he's at a point in his career, if you give me $5,000, I'll swing by and do something, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I would narrate this shitty film for $10. So.
Yeah, he probably made some, you know, a nice chunk of change for just, a couple hours of work one day?
So bad.
Oh, my God.
So bad. It's like they have just dumbed down horror to the most basic, we're going to regurgitate the same 4 storylines, but try to make them a little woke as well.
Well, yeah, they need that little
we gotta
flavor
throw in
in
a
it.
little, we got to politicize the story just a hair.
You know, I think you can tell the state of a society by the type of entertainment they consume and whether or not it's, very cerebral or like broken down to its most basic elements. And it seems across all genres now. I mean, like you remember in the late 90s, early 2000s, you had all those, I don't even know how to describe them. Like some of them were lawyer movies, some of them were crime movies, but they had like a very, I mean, if you looked away for 10 minutes, you missed some subtle point that ends up being the twist at the end or something like that.
Yes.
Very cerebral. You had to think about it, or you may even like think about the movie later, like, you know, like wondering more about the storyline because it was so in depth,
like a Michael Clayton type of film or something.
Yeah, and layered, but there's none of that. No, one movie like Primal Fear with Edward Norton and Richard Gere comes to mind.
Right. Okay.
And you don't get that in any genre now. Everything is very basic, homogenized. Just like I don't know if they think that everyone is stupid or what the deal is, but I don't know. It's disturbing.
And on occasion, right, a film will come out and people will be like, "Oh, this is a real think piece," and then you end up with a movie like Parasite or
Yeah.
Heredity,
Yeah.
where you're like, "Okay."
Oh, dude, I was totally ready for my life to be changed when I watched Parasite. And I maybe I missed it. Maybe I didn't get some part of the film, but it was not quite as groundbreaking as they led me to believe with the reviews.
I guess when you compare it to something like Choose or Die, it's a banger. I don't know.
Okay, so Heather has a long story today.
I do. So let's get right into it. Just wanted to bash that horror film and tell you 10/10 do not recommend. It's a real turd of a movie.
Choose or die.
You know what? At this fucking point, just kill me. Okay? I don't want to make the decision.
Heather's like, I would pick die in the very beginning of
Just
this
be like-
movie.
I've been waiting for this one.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
All right, so let's go.
Okay, well, this week's case discusses the kind of wealth and privilege most of us will never know.
Oh, okay.
We cannot fathom the kind of money that appears in the story.
So this is, I'm going to guess, beyond just being comfortable or having some extra money to go on vacation every year. This is some kind of insane amount of wealth.
Yes, to truly understand the story, we must begin with George Crawford. Born in 1861 in Emlenton, Pennsylvania, a public school educated boy named George took a business course at Eastman Business College in Poughkeepsie, New York. At 19, he went to work in the western Pennsylvania gas fields. For a brief period, he joined his father and brother in an oil hardware business, but eventually formed a company with his brother-in-law. Crawford accumulated a vast wealth upon his death. He was valued at $750 million.
Oh, my God.
And we're talking like turn of the century. So by today's standards, billionaire.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how quickly some of these fortunes were acquired during this time period you're talking about.
A true self-made man, he built the $750 million company from the ground up. The wealthy Crawford did not marry until he was 66 years old. And that was to a 24-year-old woman named Annie Laurie Warnock, the daughter of a wealthy St. Louis shoe manufacturer. The pair were married at White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia in 1927.
So a 66-year-old groom for the first time.
Yes.
Do you think her heart was she was marrying for love? Or do you think maybe she was marrying to improve her position in life? I guess we'll never know.
I guess we will never know, Dylan. They settled in Pittsburgh but kept a cottage in White Sulphur Springs. 4 years later, the pair was visiting West Virginia when Annie Laurie, 7 months pregnant, went into labor. Crawford, then 71, took his 28-year-old wife aboard a train bound for New York City, but they did not make it. Their only daughter, Martha, who would be nicknamed Choo Choo, and then Sunny, was born in a Pullman car in Manassas, Virginia, with a porter acting as a midwife.
That's a cute nickname.
Born on a train?
Yeah, my nickname was Steam Engine when I was little. Because I was born on a train that was pulled by a steam engine. You didn't know that part of my history, did you?
What is this, the island of Sodor? Okay, Thomas.
I would make a great Thomas the Train Face, by the way. My head's already big.
You have a huge, big head, so yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
When Sunny was only 4 years old, her father George passed away in 1935, leaving behind an empire, a huge fortune. Annie Laurie, though rich beyond her wildest dreams, felt guilty that she had married such an older man, leaving her young child fatherless. Annie Laurie moved to Greenwich, Connecticut, where she bought a sprawling estate named Tamerlane, where they would spend summers together. Sunny would then move to New York City, where she would attend the Chapin School during the school term. So they basically just summered in Connecticut and spent the rest of the year living in New York City. Sunny was adored by her mother and grandmother. The two women doted on her endlessly. Sunny was always dressed to the nines, even as a child, and was never seen in public without every blonde hair perfectly in place. Sunny was a shy girl, though, and had, to some, she kind of appeared to be not very bright, but it was because she was so very, very shy.
Yeah, I think you got to let kids be kids, no matter amount of wealth you have. And I think that's tough on a kid when they always have to be prim and proper and, worry about what other people think and just give us kind of, vision of perfection or some shit. You got to let a kid be a kid, right?
Well, this idea that Sunny's not very bright or that she's kind of a dullard follows her into adulthood. Now, those who are close to her say this was absolutely not true, that Sunny was quite intelligent, but others, possibly who kind of knew her in passing or acquaintances, felt like she wasn't that smart. She couldn't keep up with conversation, or she didn't really understand what they were talking about. Like, she didn't really know how to engage with people in discussions.
Right.
But maybe it's because she was so painfully shy. Guess we'll never know the truth, Dylan.
Well, that makes sense.
Sunny was absolutely gorgeous and grew into a stunning young woman, though she seemed to suffer from what we would probably call today as social anxiety. In public settings, she would often break out with red blotches on her neck and appeared to behave nervously. From a very early age, Sunny knew how fortunate she was and therefore was a generous person. Even as a little girl, she would buy extra clothes or toys so she could give them away to friends. Sunny's mother was a helicopter mom, vetting the child's friends and often sending the family driver along to act as a bodyguard for play dates. Like, Sunny was never allowed to have freedom.
So she wasn't dropped off at someone's house and left?
No. If she was even allowed to go to a friend's house.
She had to have her Guy Friday with her.
Yeah. Sunny's friends were other girls of wealth, oil heiresses, meat heiresses.
Yeah.
Like Swanson Farms, that kind of stuff. These were rich girls who would become society women in the 1950s. While other friends might have 5 gowns to get them through a party season, Sunny had 35. When her friends took taxis to shop at Bergdorf's, Sunny was driven in a Rolls Royce. Sunny's debut was a dinner dance held in 1949 at Tamber Lane at her mom's Georgian manor filled with fine French furniture. An orchestra was hired, and blue satin curtains replaced all the others on the ground floor of the house to match the tents outside. Sunny wore a strapless Dior ball gown with yards of white tulle and 2 small Louis XVI diamond bows.
Damn.
So Louis the 16th bows, diamonds.
So their
money.
Their fortune was so immense that even other rich people, quote unquote, were in awe of the opulence, right?
Yes, and she was the picture of opulence, Dylan. Sunny's debutante season was known for a number of legendary parties, and she attended them all. Sunny informed her mother that she did not plan to attend college, but then presented her with high grades on the college board exams. When her mother said, "I thought you weren't going to college," Sunny said, "I'm not. I just wanted to show you I could if I wanted to."
Oh, damn, Sunny.
Though Sunny would later regret this decision, feeling as though she had missed out on some intellectual mystery beyond her reach, this prompted Sunny to develop a reading habit, sometimes a book a day, on subjects like anthropology and epistemology. I think I'm saying that right.
Yeah, it's the study of something.
She did enroll in secretarial school, though dropped out after several weeks. She just hated it. Sunny found work at a decorating firm, but soon realized that she would have to give up months in Europe and sleeping until noon, so it just wasn't worth it.
Oh, poor Sunny.
Talk about spoiled. Sunny began a romance with a UN translator from a noble Russian family. When the relationship seemed to be getting serious, Annie Laurie sent her daughter off to Europe to Schloss Mittersill in the Austrian Alps. I can't read today. It was a castle converted into a trendy resort for celebrities and royalty. It was considered an heiress trap, where some of the nouveau riche American women went to meet single European royals.
Wow.
Wow.
No, I'm saying, would you go hang out there?
Well, one, I don't have any money.
So that's the answer is no.
Probably not.
And if I did, I don't think I would like the people that's there. I think they'd be all stuffy and like, oh, look at me, I have money. Ooh,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
It's,
Everyone would talk like that.
I mean, I think we all want to be rich, but then when you think of the societal pressures and the types of people the social circles, social circles you might be moving in, it's not very appealing to me.
Well, here's the thing. Let's say tomorrow we were plucked out of our incredible life that we have here.
Okay.
But certainly, blue collarish, normal, and plopped into one of these, like I'm talking billionaire, way beyond just rich. And I think it would be like a foreign landscape to you. Everything would be very strange.
When I was writing the script for the story, Dylan, and, diving into research, when I was considering this, my first thought was the late 80s, early 90s film King Ralph.
Yeah.
Where it's like John Goodman, who's basically like the Dan Connor, gets thrown into like royal court type of thing.
Right. He was the only heir to the throne or whatever, blah, blah.
Of course, I haven't seen that movie in like 30-something years, but it's what it kind of made me think of.
Well, I think that's a good description
Dylan
of what
would be sitting
I'm
at some grand, 40-foot dining table, like doing armpit farts.
Yeah, talking about can I get a Budweiser red label in here, and I have like all these fresh or really old wines to pick from, and I would just want some regular.
Ain't you got no Coke?
Exactly.
I just need a good old Coca-Cola. Ain't you got one?
And I guess the same would be said for the other person plucked from that world, dropped into our incredible life.
Like Paris Hilton in A Simple Life.
Yeah.
What's a Walmart?
Like you need to get up at 4 and go to work, Paris.
What? How do you spell work?
Jeez.
It was at this resort that Sunny met the gorgeous blonde 19-year-old prince Alfred von Auersburg. If ever anyone embodies the Prince Charming ideal, it was Alfie.
So he's like a real life Prince Charming?
Yeah, just gorgeous. He was an avid sportsman, a ladies' man, and a man's man. Everyone liked him. However, Alfie's branch of the ancient von Auersburg clan had lost its fortune, and though related to wealthy aristocrats, he had nothing.
So basically, he just had the title still.
Exactly, but otherwise, he's just broke. He's like the rest of us. He was given just enough money from relatives to keep toeholds in the world in which they were born. But really, he was a scrub. He was hanging out the side of his best friend's ride. Didn't even have the ride of his own.
I'm Thomas Duke. My name is Duke. I'm the Duke of Nothing.
On the first day of arrival, Sunny walked into the ballroom and met Prince Alfie. The two instantly fell in love. Her mother and grandmother were distressed about this, as he was too young. He was 3 years younger than Sunny, and they felt too good looking.
Too good looking for her?
Too good looking.
Okay.
Never marry a man who's too good looking, Dylan.
Is that a rule?
It's my rule.
Well, I feel like you've went against it being with me.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Yes.
Though she liked him personally, her mother had wanted her daughter to marry an American boy next door, believing they were most patient and all suffering. She wanted Sunny to marry a Yale type with a job on Wall Street. There were a lot of reasons for people in these circles to frown upon marriages between wealthy American socialites and titled paupers. The American women would not tolerate infidelity, and the European playboys of nobility saw monogamy as a constraint of their manhood.
Well, I mean, I could see that being an issue if both parties view it like that, because that's, polar opposites.
So all the warning signs were there for Sunny and Alfie, but none of that mattered. And on July 20th of 1957, Sunny became Princess von Auersburg. The first few years of Sunny's marriage was like a storybook fairy tale. It was living in Munich, Germany in the honeymoon phase that Sunny hired Maria Schrollhammer, who would become her long-term housekeeper and confidant. Together, the couple had 2 children, a daughter, Princess Annie Laurie, and a son, Prince Alexander. Now they call the daughter Princess Alla instead of the Annie Laurie.
So she really is a little princess.
Yeah.
Wow.
The marriage began to crumble, and in early 1965, Sunny took her 2 children and moved back to New York City. Alfie told friends he would have her back within the year, but his philandering was something Sunny didn't want to deal with anymore, so she obtained a Nevada divorce, and in June of 1966, married a man named Claus Von Bulow in a small ceremony.
So she just wasn't going to stand for it.
No, Alfie's a playboy. He's an avid sportsman. So while they're married, throughout the duration of the marriage, he's always off skiing, hunting, shooting.
And I would say likely she's financing all that.
She absolutely is.
Because he really doesn't have any means of his own. And then when you add that, those kinds of hobbies would create space and time away from each other, doing it on that scale, and then you add on top of that the philandering. That's just not a good mix.
No, he's out spending her money,
and she's paying for it.
living on high cotton, right? While she's footing the bill.
Nah.
No.
So she was done with that.
It's probably not going to work for most women,
right? And she's not going to have your typical, I don't know what to do, the finances. She doesn't have those worries. So if she doesn't want to be with him, she's just not going to be with him, right?
No. And I go into the background and wanted to kind of set the story up so we understand the kind of wealth we're dealing with here. I mean, marrying a prince, rubbing shoulders with royalty.
Yes.
Hobnobbing all over Europe.
Wow, so some of the most famous
Jet
pedophiles.
setting.
That's awesome.
Okay. So, born Klaus Cecil Borberg in Copenhagen in 1926, his mother was a member of the wealthy German von Bulow family. His father was a playwright and dramatic critic. They divorced when Klaus was small, and his father remarried the granddaughter of Heinrich Ibsen. If anyone's ever read Hedda Gabler out there, it's a pretty famous playwright. When Klaus was 7, he was sent to a Swiss boarding school, which gave him a glimpse of how the elite live and gave him access to the sons of prominent European families. With growing turmoil sweeping Europe in the late 1930s, Klaus eventually returned to a prestigious school in Denmark, where he learned to speak many languages. When Nazis marched into Denmark, his father did not publicly oppose them and would later be tried and found guilty as a collaborator.
Wow.
When Klaus's mother was in Paris, she learned of the invasion and decided to move on to London. She left Klaus behind with his grandfather. Since he was at boarding school, she felt he should be safe there. That the Nazis probably were not trying to go rip children out of boarding schools.
Well, they were Nazis.
So, I don't know.
Or don't let me find out there's no damn Jews down there at that boarding school, some bitch. I'm going to come down there and find out.
During Christmas of 1941, Klaus went to visit his mother for the holiday, but the real reason was to permanently move there, leaving behind his Nazi-occupied homeland. At the age of 16, he was accepted at Cambridge University and graduated in 1946 with a law degree. Klaus was the youngest to ever do so, but was still too young to pass the bar exam. He needed to wait 2 years before he was allowed to take the bar.
How in the world? That's crazy.
He spent the first year in Paris, then took a job at Hambros Bank for 6 months until he was old enough to take the bar exam, which he passed. Klaus had no interest in criminal law, but felt no one would take him seriously as a civil attorney because of his youth. He joined the chambers of barrister Lord Hailsham, where he worked for 8 years. Eventually, Klaus and his mother bought a flat at Belgrave Square, which was a really swanky spot in London.
Can we say that's an incredible name?
Like a very elite type of neighborhood.
Lord Hellsgrave?
Hailsham.
Hailsham.
Klaus was tall, handsome, intelligent, and well-educated with impeccable manners. He had changed his name to Bulow while he was still a boy in Denmark. He had learned to move in all the right circles, concentrating on the pastimes of the highest social echelons, and had an air of mystery since he was a foreigner, which provided him freedom from all manner of cumbersome social impediments that might exist in his background. So because he was a foreigner, others couldn't exactly pinpoint, where he had gone to school and didn't dive too much into his family history because he was kind of a mysterious foreigner. So it gave him this freedom to be able to move in these social circles.
Right.
And be accepted.
Right, and without being questioned too much.
Right.
Okay.
Because, if he had grown up with these folks in London and had not attended the right schools.
Oh, he went to public
would be
school.
Rejected. Exactly. Claus learned to navigate this world of high society, being an outsider. He possessed the education and manners to move in those circles, but that social level did not come naturally to him. By the time he met Sunny, Claus had established himself among the elite, and those who did not like him, it was mostly personal rather than due to his lack of old money or family history. Because Claus was kind of a smartass. He definitely was very charming, but had a very smartass personality and would kind of say things to these rich people that nobody else would get away with. But he could kind of get away with saying it, so a lot of people thought he was just too much or too outspoken.
Yeah, so he's handsome, charming, he's smart, obviously, and smart ass, and probably says things or approaches situations unlike most people they're used to because he's not from their circles, right?
Exactly. Yet Claus had achieved some level of success on his own. As J.P. Getty's assistant, the younger man represented Getty in overseas negotiations, often traveling in his place, and took charge of specific aspects of Getty's business, such as overseeing purchasing for a Middle East operation where everything from oil drills to cigarettes had to be purchased abroad and sent to the site. So he's doing very well for himself at the time he meets Sunny. With his earnings, Von Bulow lived at the lavish yet sparsely decorated Belgrave Square apartment, employed a butler, and threw lavish parties, yet would go through periods of being absolutely broke. It seemed Claus was constantly in debt at the time before he met Sunny. Claus, standing at 6'3", was described as having an arresting appearance and often used aggressive rudeness to charm women. He'd say things like, quote, "My dear, all that makeup gives you the look of a female impersonator."
Whoa.
Jokes that signaled wickedness yet self-assuredness on his part. People thought he was corrupt and evil yet fun to be around. His insults were considered playful or devilish. People found him amusing, and he was winning at making friends. Some people thought he was like a Jekyll and Hyde type of duality, cruel and arrogant at times, but then warm and sympathetic.
Why do I feel like you would connect and hang out with Claus?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Rumors circulated in London that Claus was involved in orgies throughout his 20s and 30s, as well as had a torture chamber in his apartment, donned with paddles and whips, along with sadistic military artifacts like spiked helmets.
Jeez Louise, bud. Let me take it to the next level, lady.
I wonder if he wears the spiked helmets.
Wow. I mean, you'd have to.
He's like, "Girl, we're going to play a sex game. It's called Christians and Lions. You'll have to look in my pants for the lion."
Oh. Yes, and he puts on the spiked helmet.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. In speculating what must have drawn a woman like Sunny to Claus, he was quite a contrast to her first husband. Alfie had been good looking, but Claus was suave, cerebral, and cultivated. The perfect companion for a Fifth Avenue dinner party. Claus would say Sunny was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen, and as sincere as this might have been, friends knew the 40-year-old bachelor would only marry a very wealthy woman.
So Alfie was handsome, but there wasn't a whole lot of depth to him. He was kind of the kick around playboy, I'm going to play polo, whatever, games, hunt. But as far as the intellectual side seemed to have been lacking with him,
Exactly.
Right? Okay. And these people always seem to be out to impress each other, even when they go to these functions, these fundraisers, these dinner parties, whatever. I guess back then it was more just balls, right? Just
I've got big balls.
Oh, I knew you were
The
gonna
biggest
do that.
balls of all.
Yeah, so they just throw these for just the shit for the hell of it, or I mean, could you imagine that kind of the kind of money they drop on these events?
We know what they say, Dylan. The balls that are held for pleasure are the ones I like the best.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Me and AC/DC.
I will never be invited to a ball. Will you?
I've been to a ball,
You've been to a ball?
the Navy ball, which I don't think you can really consider that a ball.
I don't think that counts.
It's like a formal event. You get to wear a uniform and get drunk.
It seems like too much to me. I don't know if it'd be that much fun.
I guess if you're the spouse, then you would get to wear like a ball gown, but you just had to wear a uniform.
You had to wear your dressies.
Yeah.
Isn't that what they call them?
Which is not very fun. You can't really party in that uniform.
Okay, so now here she is with is this the man of her dreams?
Klaus?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe.
Okay. Or just somebody different.
They meet. He's completely the opposite of her first husband.
Alfie.
Probably filling this void she's been kind of missing in her life, right?
I'm just going to let that one on. Leave that one on the table. I'm sure he is helping her feel better about herself. Let's just say that.
After the marriage, Klaus attempted to work for Getty from New York City, but was always traveling between Los Angeles and London, and Sunny wanted to raise her children in the city. So after 2 years of marriage, Klaus gave up his career.
So he was making good money, but it sounds at the same time that he was kind of living beyond his means as well.
He was, and he definitely was in a position working for J.P. Getty that, if he had stuck it out, he definitely would have moved up the ladder. It was basically like Getty's right-hand man.
Well, if he's going in his stead and doing international, negotiations and all these acquiring all these goods and stuff, which was a really big deal back then, to have a man who goes in person and makes sure this stuff happens. So yeah, he actually had a lot of trust from his bosses, So he certainly could have leveraged that and continued moving up and making more money and all that.
Wellen was making a lot of connections in the business world because he worked for Getty. That opened doors to other, international businesses, big corporations, So he was in a position to have a lot of success had he stayed in this career.
But now he's met her, and he's just like, I don't need to do this job anymore.
Well, she doesn't really want him to work either, and we'll get into that as we get on in the story here, Dylan. So when he moved to New York City, he added the Von to his name, which later people will point out added to Klaus's phoniness, because at this point he was Claus Bulow. But then he moves to New York, he marries Sunny, he becomes Claus Von Bulow.
Wow.
In April of 1967, the couple had a daughter, Cosima. It seemed after the birth of their daughter, Sunny kind of retreated from friends who increasingly found it difficult to reach her. When Klaus answered the phone, he would relay excuses that Sunny was exhausted from travel or out with the children. 3 of her best friends eventually met up and discussed the situation and felt they were being snubbed by Klaus. They entertained, but it was mostly Klaus's friends that came over for dinner, drinks.
So in their eyes, a noticeable difference now that he's in the picture.
It did seem that Sunny was happy being an introvert and settled into the lifestyle of not having to deal with being social, but a great deal of time was devoted to the children. Sunny often traveled with the kids, and they were known for their perfect manners. Everyone said her children were just like these amazingly well-mannered, respectable, just like these really intelligent little children.
Wow, where do you get some of those at?
I don't know, but maybe we need some etiquette books or something.
That's like
Sunny
like
needs
the
to give us
opposite.
some tips. She took the children to Europe and all over the United States, even traveling on the Delta Queen riverboat down the Mississippi. When her older children were 11 and 12, Sunny didn't want them to be confined to the city, but refused to send them off to summer camp, as a family togetherness was always very important to Sunny. She really was family oriented, and like the kids were her number one. Her kids were her world.
So
That's what her Facebook bio said.
that's what her Facebook bio would say. Her kids are her world.
Yeah.
And that only God can judge her.
So she decided to purchase a property by the ocean. Her mother had bought a home in Newport, Rhode Island, so Sunny decided to do the same. However, the social scene in Newport was anything but relaxing for Sunny. Her reclusiveness was a problem in town, where every night there was a social event to attend.
So, I mean, are you just expected to partake in these types of events?
Yes,
I mean, is it just
absolutely.
wow? That would get old to me.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, even if there was a fun party every night, after a couple, couple of weeks of that, I'd be like, dude, this is enough. I'm good.
Well, these very rich people, Dylan, they don't work. They don't really have a lot going on. So
They don't have
the
anything.
socializing is their job.
Wow.
In essence.
Yeah, that's funny. That's a good way to look at it.
Which sounds like my nightmare. I relate to Sunny's reclusiveness a lot because this would be my nightmare to have to attend events and functions every night.
So even though her friends are kind of like, oh, Klaus is in the picture, he's making her be this way. It seems like Sunny's like, I enjoy this.
No, she really wanted to
Right.
be this way. And if anything, Klaus was her buffer.
Right.
She was able to get Klaus to kind of buffer her disinterest in being around people.
Okay, good.
But they see it as Klaus is snubbing them. And they were kind of like, who the fuck's he supposed to be? Like,
Right.
we've never been snubbed
How dare he?
by this fellow.
Oh, he added the Vaughn.
Yeah, exactly. Klaus would later say moving to Newport had been bad for Sunny psychologically. For example, she became a member at a beach club, but wanted a cabana on the end for more privacy. Yet she realized she had to pass by all the other members who wanted to say hello and chit-chat while she was walking to the cabana.
Oh, my
on the
God.
end. She joked about climbing the fence at the end of the row so she could avoid people. Sunny's my spirit animal.
Yeah, I know you gave me the one all the way down so I'd be left alone, but can you get everybody to leave until I get down there to mine so I don't have to see them?
Clarendon Court was a 20-room Bellevue Avenue mansion built in 1904 by a Pennsylvania railroad executive. It was designed after a Palladian manor of 1710 that still sits in County Durham, England. The house was actually used in the 1950 film High Society, starring Grace Kelly, Frank Sinatra, and Bing Crosby. And by the way, Sunny and Grace Kelly, they have a very striking resemblance.
Really?
Yeah. Like,
Wow.
Sunny was very pretty and reminds me of Grace Kelly when she was a young woman. Now, the couple mostly concerned themselves with renovations to the outside of the property. Nearly $1 million was spent building walls and attempting to make it more private. Klaus even called a touring company to ask that they not mention the home or its owners on their bus tour. This was at Sunny's urging, because this tour would drive through Newport and point out all the rich mansions,
Yeah.
who lives there, give a little background about this person's heir to this fortune or whatever. And Sunny did everything possible to block the view of the home, put up these big walls.
And she doesn't even want to be mentioned to
She
people.
doesn't want to be mentioned to people.
Now, would you go on a tour like that to just look at like rich people's houses? I mean, do you think those types of things are interesting? And if someone does, there's nothing wrong with that. It just doesn't appeal to me.
No, I think like if I went to Los Angeles, I mean, I've been to Los Angeles, but I didn't really do any of the tours. But they do have like celebrity home tours.
Right.
And they'll drive you through them. Now, I think that would be kind of cool, just because I do love architecture. Looking at these exquisite houses. I mean, I think it would be very cool to know the history of some of the older homes. This was owned by this celebrity, whatever. I mean, that's kind of cool. But, I don't know. If I'm going to go to Newport, Rhode Island and want to drive around, I could just pick up a copy of like Architectural Digest and read it. You know what I mean?
Well, I guess different strokes, different folks.
Yeah. Well, the home was filled with British antiques, Waterford chandeliers, and Chippendale chairs. There wasn't even an armchair there made for George III. Sunny threw herself into the house, just decorating. She really kind of made this her whole life for a period. All of her time, energy was spent working on the house. And though she employed housekeepers, a butler, and a French chef, she was kind of known for having these simple tastes. Her favorite meal was shepherd's pie.
Oh, yeah.
And she loved Colonel Sanders' chicken legs, often sending her chauffeur out for a bucket of chicken.
The original recipe.
She also really enjoyed eating chicken livers with bacon.
Oh, fried chicken livers?
Yes.
Nice. Damn, Sonny's just a simple girl with simple taste.
She is, much to her French chef's chagrin.
Yeah, so she can literally have all this different stuff or ask for anything, and she just wants some of the more plain, simpler, which is, hey, good fried chicken, good livers.
Some KFC.
Is good stuff. But I guess that just goes to show that Sunny doesn't care about impressing people or anything. She just wants to do,
She just
her.
wants to live her best life.
Yeah.
Right? She doesn't want to have to entertain. She doesn't want to live up to anyone's standards. She just wants to do Sunny.
I bet she walks around with no bra on.
I don't blame her. Good for her.
She's your spirit animal.
So by now, Sunny is aging, and she's very concerned about her appearance, maintaining a certain weight, the fact that she's, at this point, she's in her 40s, starting to get the fine lines, the wrinkles, she's lives in a world where appearances are everything. So she starts becoming a bit obsessed about the aging process.
Well, and back then, your 40s was, might be what we look at as like at late 50s now, you know what I mean? As far as your life, how long people live and all that,
Well, I've got a birthday approaching in a couple of days, and I'm starting to feel that midlife crisis a little bit.
I don't feel any crisis about it. I'm okay with it.
I need some Botox.
No.
I
No.
need some work done.
You don't need any
Some
work.
fillers.
You're just the way he made you.
That's what you say.
Yeah, and you say all this, and we're probably going to have snacks when we get done podcasting.
I was going to say we say this, and then Joan's like, you want me to go get a bucket of chicken? You're talking about fried chicken. Now I want some.
I wish I had some of the Colonel's 1980s recipe.
It was better then.
It's different. We'll talk about that some other time, but it's different now. It's not the taste of my childhood.
It's not.
No.
Sunny, now aging, as I mentioned, spent a lot of time playing golf and swimming laps to maintain her appearance. She would also spend hours arranging flowers for the house. She had 11 acres and 11 gardeners. Her days were spent foraging for baskets of flowers, which she would take back to Clarendon Court and then spend the entire day arranging these flowers.
Okay.
Her typical schedule was this: sleep till 11, call her mother, who lived just down the street. She would attend an exercise class or swim for a few hours. Shopping, she would have lunch. As I mentioned, the chicken livers with bacon, that was her favorite. Then return home to put on pajamas and watch TV with Klaus. It was a wholesome, if not boring, life.
That sounds awesome.
I know, right? On the occasional outing, Sunny typically wanted to retire early. Klaus felt the home was a waste. It was always decorated as if 80 people were coming over for a party, yet they rarely entertained.
Well, see, I was wondering that she's kind of leaned into this home life, reclusiveness, and I was wondering how Klaus felt about that. So that's interesting.
Well, all the time and attention to detail that Sunny had spent perfecting their home, only for the family to use 2 rooms in the house, the library and the bedroom.
That's crazy.
Klaus was just like, what are you doing? We have this amazing house. You've got floral arrangements, fresh flowers from
Every day.
one end of the house to the other. It looks like we're having some grand event here. And it's just for us.
And
so
she's
we
in
can
her
go
pajamas.
hang out in the library. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's what she wants. Damn it.
It seemed Klaus and Sunny, though, alike were starkly different. Both were insecure, and it seemed that Klaus wanted to show off wealth in order to fit in, and Sunny retreated from showing off her wealth, feeling like it made people like her less. Sunny appeared bored when she did attend dinners and social gatherings, so Klaus would inform the hostess that Sunny appreciated being seated next to a very intelligent person.
Okay.
Many of the guests who tried desperately to entertain Sunny found her incredibly dull. So it seems that most people passed over the idea that Sunny didn't care for socializing, and instead thought she was just simple, boring, not very smart. When the reality is, she was really bored because she just didn't fucking want to be there. And she wasn't really engaging in conversation because she probably just didn't give a shit what these people were talking about.
Yeah, so no amount of trying to be interesting or cool subject matters or any of that. She just doesn't want to be there, period.
Yes.
And nothing's going to change her mind.
Right.
But to the point where it's obvious that she's not enjoying herself, right?
Right. So after 12 years of marriage, which seemed to settle in a way that Sunny found pleasing, they had 2 homes, 3 splendid children, 4 dogs, and an attentive husband. Her children will later say she had no objections to Claus having a job, but it did seem as if she wanted him by her side or having him on call. Now, Claus was exasperated by this, but he would say he couldn't change Sunny. He wanted a career. He wanted to work, but he knew it was just such a point of contention in their marriage that Sunny would never change, that she would always kind of expect him to just be there with her.
Right.
That it wasn't even worth fighting over.
Right. And who's to know what the real truth is there, right? Maybe he didn't want to work, but, it seems like he was successful, good at what he did, and could, go on to be more successful.
Well, we're going to get into that.
Okay.
In April of 1978, Claus met Alexandra Isles at the Knickerbocker Club. Because Sunny was antisocial to Klaus's energized personality, he began to view her as a sad tag-along in her own life. Also, after Cosima's birth, Sunny called an end to their sex life. A doctor would later say that Sunny had confided she had not had sex with her husband in at least 5 years.
Wow.
So Sunny's like a recluse. She just kind of wants to hang out all the time.
Well, I've got to say,
she's not sexually interested in her husband, or just doesn't have any interest in sex anymore.
It sounds to me, honestly, across the board, like Sunny may be rather depressed. You know what I mean?
Well, that's an interesting point you bring up, Dylan, because that might come into play later.
Okay.
Alexandra Isles was 14 years younger than Sunny, from a wealthy San Francisco family, and she was also a television actress. She was on a show, Dark Shadows.
Oh, wow.
Playing Victoria. Claus slowly began courting Alexandra, inviting her to lunch with other guests, though it was clear she was the main reason for the lunch date. For 9 months, this went on until he invited her to dinner alone at the Caravelle. He told her at this dinner that he was in love with her. So they started an affair. After 2 months, Claus informed Alexandra his intention was to marry her, but he needed to carefully extricate himself from the marriage to Sunny. Alexandra made it clear she was not interested in having this discreet love affair. She was also looking for a long-term relationship and someone to be a father figure to her son. She wanted a husband.
So her son she already has?
Yes.
Okay.
She told him she thought 6 months was an appropriate amount of time for Claus to settle his marriage. In early 1979, Claus also met a man named Mark Millard, a Wall Street titan. Claus convinced Millard to allow him to work for him, but he wanted a flexible schedule, and he was willing to do this work for free. He wanted to reestablish himself in the world of business.
Oh, okay. Just kind of get his feet wet.
Yeah, he was like, look, I've been out of the game for a while. Let me come to work for you. I do need a flexible schedule because I've got a wife. We have kids. I'm kind of at her beck and call a little bit, but I will do whatever for free if you'll give me a flexible schedule.
Right. And then that could lead directly to good work when he does end his marriage with Sunny, right? I'm assuming.
Claus was an impressive worker who packed 40 hours into a 30-hour work week and began traveling with Millard. In 1980, the fee arrangement began, and Claus earned about $25,000 for his work over the course of a year. With his affair blooming, Claus began talking to his friends about Sunny's drinking and depression. He told them in the strictest confidence, therefore lowering his risk of people asking why he'd be gossiping about a wife he was supposed to protect. No one questioned the validity of this information, as Claus had always been a man of honor. Yet her children nor employees ever saw Sunny drinking or that she seemed depressed.
Oh, okay.
But as you've said, Dylan, some of her behavior might make one assume she's depressed.
Well, yeah, and obviously they knew a lot less about these types of disorders back then, which I think maybe now we know too much about it, because it seems like a lot of people might use it as kind of an excuse when they're not truly depressed. But yeah, I mean, just a withdrawing from friends. And beyond depression, like a social anxiety disorder, or just any of those that we talk about commonly nowadays, to be that comfortable, never going anywhere, and then when you are kind of forced to have that strong of a reaction to where you can't even hide the fact your displeasure of being there and stuff, leads me to believe she could be agoraphobic to a degree, or some of these other things.
When Sunny's daughter, Alla, confronted him about people saying her mother had a liquor problem, Claus answered, "How could you think such a thing of me, especially when you and I both know it's not true?"
Wow, Claus, really?
Claus even relayed this information to the family doctor, who made a notation in Sunny's medical record. Others noted when Sunny did attend a party and seemed to be having fun, Claus would whisk her away. So was this to avoid embarrassment if she were to get drunk, or was this because Sunny didn't drink and it would prove Claus was a liar?
So he's kind of like doing this long play that kind of discredit his wife, if you will, which is very strange.
Well, later, 7 witnesses who lived in the house will testify that Sunny drank much less than the average person, if she drank at all. So basically, it'd be like if you try to tell people I was a raging alcoholic.
Yeah, you're not. You're a binge drinker.
I feel like Sunny and I, we have so much in common. You know what I'm saying? Like, I felt Sunny when I was researching the story.
But the people closest to her are like, what is this? If anybody mentions it, we never see her drink. She just doesn't act like this. So it's kind of interesting that he's going to these lengths to lay out kind of this exit strategy for himself.
It is, but I think to play devil's advocate, if Sunny did have a drinking problem, these are people who would go to great lengths to cover up that information.
That's true.
To save face.
That's
because
true.
They are very concerned with appearance and reputation, and would never want anyone to think that Sunny had any problems. Now, her maid Maria did say that 18 years earlier, when living in Europe, Sunny did drink too much, but also Sunny was a lightweight who could basically have 2 drinks and she would be drunk as hell.
Yeah, and that was 18 years ago.
But this is when they were living in Europe, and Sunny was younger.
Yeah, and people change, people evolve.
It was also around the time that he met Alexandra that Claus had a staff meeting at the house and directed everyone to cut expenses. He wanted to go over the weekly receipts. He installed 25-watt light bulbs to reduce the electric bill and told the gardener to keep spring planting to a minimum. He and Sunny argued about this. One of the house staff was married to a former police officer, and Sunny really liked having this man around and said she felt really safe when he was there. And out of the blue, Claus fired this woman for no reason.
Oh, strange.
Sunny was angry and demanded that they return to work, but Von Bulow was given this drawing account to pay bills, so a lot of people assume his cuts to the household spending was so that he could pocket the money his wife was giving him to pay for the utilities and the expenses and staff.
It could be.
At the end of 1979, Sunny signed a new will that superseded the one she'd put into place back in 1969. It left the contents of Clarendon Court, the Rhode Island mansion, and all, the house and all of its contents to Claus, along with his other inheritance. Now, around this time, Sunny told her son, Alexander, that she was considering divorce. Claus was taking a job much like the one he had had before that involved travel, and she didn't want this. She didn't want to stand in the way of the life that Claus wanted for himself. Alexander at the time thought Claus was good for his mother and told Sunny, like, don't divorce him over this. Like, you guys should work it out. It was in December of 1979, on the 26th to be exact, Dylan, that the family was having their usual early dinner, and then they went to the family library to sip eggnog.
What the fuck did these people in their evenings?
Let's retire to the library for some eggnog.
Of course, I guess it's Christmas time, so okay. Here we go.
You're just mad because you have to, like, retire to the porch to smoke a cigarette.
Well, yeah, hey, I have no problems. My little cooler out there is my my makeshift seat, and I have no problem sitting there upon my Walmart throne.
I even got your little bucket for your cigarette butts.
Yes, or not so subtle
so you
hint.
Stop throwing them in my fucking yard.
But I would pick them up.
Like
now
we're just the trash that we are, but people don't need to know that.
Let's be clear. It's like a dog owner. It's like I picked that poo up.
I don't want their first impression to be these people are trash. I would like them to get to know us before they determine that we're trash. Okay?
Yeah, be like, let me earn that title, you son of a bitch.
There's a lot of reasons why people should think we're trash besides your cigarette butts all over the place.
Okay.
But
yeah, I'm not jealous of these people. I just think it's like, which, when we went through the Biltmore house, it was pretty interesting how important rooms like the game room or the library were. That's where people, because these people, like you said a minute ago, they get up and like have porters and staff that help them dress, and then they all get ready, for breakfast and then dinner, and then these people have when you minus work and chores and everything out of your life, it's kind of hard to fill the time. You know what I mean?
It's boring.
But it struck me as boring.
It's boring
to a degree. You have all this money and stuff, but like, what is it? Your life seems a little boring. It's kind of weird.
Like, what are you really doing? You're hanging out in the library sipping eggnog.
Yeah.
Alexander, then 20, he noticed his mother's speech began to slur. Normally, if Sunny drank at all, she was silly and talkative, but her speech was slurred and low. He could barely hear her. So her son escorted Sunny back to her bedroom. Around 8 p.m., Maria, the housekeeper, checked on Sunny, who was lying asleep next to a fully clothed Claus. Not an unusual scene. The next morning, I lost my place. Sorry, give me a second.
It's okay.
The next morning, Sunny didn't wake, and Claus greeted Maria to say that his wife wasn't feeling well. Later, when Maria entered into Sunny's bedroom, the woman, a light sleeper, was completely immobile and unconscious, which was very strange because Maria said in the, 20 plus years she had worked for Sunny, if she even opened the door, it would wake Sunny up.
Right. Just like you.
So here she is, just completely out of it.
Oh, and it's obvious, it's noticeable because she sleeps light as a feather.
Maria told Claus she thought they needed to get Sunny to a hospital, but he said she was sleeping and should be left alone. In 23 years, Maria had never seen her employer in this condition. She left but returned a half hour later to check on Sunny again. Maria tried rousing Sunny but got no response. It was then that Claus agreed to phone a doctor, but then he told Maria there was no doctor in Newport to call and brushed off her request again because their family doctor had been in New York City. So he was like, I don't even know who I'd call, to come to the house.
Yeah, anybody, guy. There's got to be a doctor.
Claus changed from pajamas into day clothes, but remained in the bed with Sunny while she was passed out. Staff members came in frequently to check on her. Now, later, it will be deduced that perhaps Claus was waiting on Sunny to die or had injected himself with some kind of drug to take the edge off what could be a difficult day. Claus will admit he had an addiction to Valium, so that could explain his odd behavior. Upon her third entry to the bedroom, asking Claus to call a doctor, he said, Maria, it's not that easy being married to Mrs. Von Bulow. which she thought was
Strange.
an odd thing to say.
Yeah.
Finally, around 3 p.m., Klaus phoned a doctor in front of Maria and went on to say that Sunny had one of her nights involving alcohol. Around 6 p.m., Sunny's breathing became irregular and raspy. Maria described it as a rattling sound. Klaus then called the doctor once more and requested he come to the house immediately. The doctor, upon arrival, barked at Klaus to call the fire department because Sunny needed to be taken to the hospital ASAP.
So as soon as the doctor sees her, she needs to go to the hospital.
Yeah. 2 minutes later, Sunny vomited, then stopped breathing. She had no pulse. The doctor began emergency care, like performing CPR, trying various things to, bring her back. And after 15 minutes of strenuous effort, her pulse returned. She was breathing normally after about 10 minutes. Sunny was transported to the hospital around 7:30 p.m. Blood was taken quickly. When the results came back, Sunny's blood sugar was very low, 41 milligrams per 100 milligrams. Her potassium and phosphorus levels were also dangerously low. There were no traces of barbiturates or alcohol in her system. After receiving glucose injections, her blood sugar dropped even lower to 20 milligrams per 100 milligrams.
Which is the opposite way of where it should go, or it should go up, correct?
The only explanation is Sunny had a high level of insulin, which was eating her blood sugar. When the insulin level was checked, it was at 72 milligrams per 100 milligrams.
So that's high.
Yes.
That's very high.
Alexander was confronted by Maria, who told him she thought Klaus didn't want Sunny to survive whatever was happening to her. So this is back at the house. Although Alexander thought his stepfather's behavior was abnormal and a little odd, he didn't want to tell his mother, but said they should just keep a close eye on Klaus. Alexander did feel they should inform his grandmother, Annie Laurie. Alexander and Klaus would speak later that evening, and his stepfather would explain that he wanted a career. Now, this conversation, Alexander's like, it was out of nowhere. My mom's in the hospital. We have no idea what's going on. And Klaus immediately starts talking about he wants a career, that people in Newport talked, and there were whispers that Klaus was a kept man, a gigolo, and someone happy to live off his wife's money, and he was not. Now, at the time, Alexander didn't make a connection between his mother's health issue and his stepfather's unhappiness, but just thought it was a very strange conversation.
Well, yeah. And it was unprompted, right? He just starts talking about how he wants this future he doesn't have, and people are making him feel this way. And as a child, you'd be thinking,
yeah, this young man's just like, okay.
Shouldn't you be worried about, my mom, your wife being sick? Shouldn't that be the forefront of your thought right now?
Exactly. Klaus then phoned his mistress, Alexandra, who was in Ireland. Alexandra would say she felt sorry for Sunny and that she had been upset because she had compassion for Sunny, who was supposedly suffering from depression and suicidal tendencies. So Klaus has informed his mistress and has made it seem like Sunny is very depressed. She's got all these problems, and she's probably trying to kill herself.
Again, calling your mistress while your wife's sick is very weird. It's very weird.
When Sunny finally recovered, the hospital would reach no conclusion about what exactly had happened to her. After Klaus spoke to the hospital doctor, the professional insisted that Sunny needed to speak with a psychiatrist, but she refused on 3 occasions. The doctor was able to ask her a few questions and concluded that Sunny was a neurotic who needed help.
Oh.
Just based on the few questions that she answered. Klaus informed the doctor that Sunny suffered from depression. She terminated their sexual relationship after their daughter was born, and the pair slept in separate beds. Because she had trouble sleeping, Sunny depended on tranquilizers for sleeping. He told the doctor that Sunny had low self-esteem and often drank too much. So by the end of Sunny's first hospital stay, the doctor was convinced she needed psychiatric help. And just before she was discharged, Sunny was smoking in her room, and the doctor was horrified as she had just been on a respirator for several days.
Huh.
It convinced the doctor the picture Von Bulow painted of Sunny as this deeply neurotic woman was the right one.
So are we heading towards an involuntary commitment here?
Well, let's get into this, Dylan.
Oh my God, what happens next? Because honestly, I thought she was just gonna die, and that was it. Klaus poisoned her, blah blah blah, and that was welcome. We'll see you next week. But now I'm truly intrigued at where it goes next.
On January 2nd, Sunny, despite doctors wanting her to stay longer, left the hospital. After days of testing, doctors determined the coma was a result of low blood sugar and diagnosed her as hypoglycemic, warning her against overindulging on sweets or going too long without eating.
So basically, she got the diabetes, kind of. Hyperglycemic?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a separate thing. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I was like, what are you...
So but it's a blood sugar. She has to be aware of her blood sugar.
Yeah.
Okay.
She can't eat too many sweets. She can't go extended periods without eating something. Can't get that low blood sugar. Yeah. So only a few months later, in April of 1980, Sunny was again hospitalized after appearing incoherent and disoriented. Their doctors reconfirmed she suffered from reactive hypoglycemia. She was advised again to maintain control. I don't know why I cannot talk. It's like anytime we have an episode that's very extended.
That has words in it.
My brain stops working. She was advised to maintain control of the hypoglycemia by following a strict diet, limiting her sugar intake, and avoiding alcohol altogether. However, Sunny went back to New York City to visit her family doctor of 26 years, who didn't buy the story of alcoholism. This family doctor said Sunny showed no signs of an alcoholic. She didn't have shaky hands, red skin, or alcohol breath.
Okay. But, yeah. Well, that may be, but it sounds like she may very well be hyperglycemic. Or something's causing these episodes.
Right. Now, the family doctor felt Klaus's story was more about marital issues than health issues. So he didn't tell Sunny what her husband was alleging about her, that she was an alcoholic. The doctor didn't share any of this with Sunny because he was like, I'm not trying to get in the middle of this marital issue.
Right.
Yet Klaus further offered proof of Sunny's problems by pointing to the fact she had broken a hip 2 years before the coma incident, when she had gone to the bathroom by herself, indicating there had been a driving force like alcohol behind the fall. But others see it with a different lens. While Maria and the children painted Klaus as a husband who seemingly did not care for his wife, it could be viewed as the opposite. Was Klaus being truthful while others covered up for Sunny for fear her reputation would be tarnished?
Oh, wow.
After this incident, marital tensions increased between the couple. Maria, the housekeeper, said she was cleaning up the Manhattan apartment when she discovered a black leather bag like one that a man might keep an electric razor in. When she opened the bag, and this was also in a closet that contained like Sunny's party gowns, tuxes. Like this was not a closet they used very often.
Some kind of storage closet or something like that.
Right. So she's in there straightening up. She finds this black bag. When she opened the bag, there were prescription drug bottles with the name Claus Von Bulow and one with the name Leslie Baxter on it. They contained white powder and a buttery substance. Maria phoned Alla, Sunny's daughter, to look at the items. They took them to the family doctor for testing on March 4th behind Klaus's back. Now, the children would later say they didn't show Sunny because she would have thrown the items out of the house and would have been angry that they were sleuthing behind Klaus's back.
So they knew for her protection, they just went around her or kept her out of it.
Yes, but this is suspicious to me, Dylan, especially since their explanation was to keep the scandal out of the public eye. They wanted to keep the matter private. So that almost sounds like they would keep Sunny's alcohol addiction private too if she had one.
Yeah.
And if they were really concerned about Klaus's homicidal plans, wouldn't they do something about it rather than sneaking around?
Maybe contact authorities?
Yeah.
The police?
Confide in an attorney, get some legal advice, something.
So this mysterious bag's been discovered, right?
Yes.
And they're basically saying this is Klaus's bag, his stuff. What is, with these strange substances in it?
Well, it turns out the white powder was a barbiturate and the buttery substance was Valium.
Wow. You can get Valium butter?
Well, I guess it was like a, what do you call that? Compounded?
Yeah, it sounds like it's been, crushed up. Maybe, pain, or, medicine crushed up to where it could easily be hidden into food or drink, right? That's the feeling I'm getting.
Well, that's their feeling. But then, of course, Klaus also admitted that he had a Valium addiction. So maybe this was something he had concocted
For himself. Ah.
Now, this further led the children and Maria to conclude that Klaus was up to no good, though, like I mentioned before, Klaus was an admitted Valium addict himself. In the spring of 1980, Klaus also sent a letter to those managing his wife's affairs about an allowance she had promised him. It was kind of like a trust fund. Now, many moneyed women will set aside a fund for their spouse to establish some sort of financial dependence for their husbands, right? Klaus had always declined this offer from Sunny, but now seemed keen on the idea. Sunny was going to give him $2 million. Now, there were some back and forth discussions over tax issues, like, I guess her attorney, and I didn't want to get too much into it because, I kind of glaze over when I start reading about financial shit, but it was like her attorney wanted to put this money into, like, this non-profit type of thing, and then Klaus could, like, draw almost like a pension from this.
Okay.
Somehow, and it would be like a tax shelter type of thing.
And he basically would prefer the whole amount, take all the taxes off the top kind of thing.
Well, her attorney's advising this, but Sunny knew her husband wanted some sense of financial independence. She had noted that Klaus was moody and frustrated, which Sunny thought was a result that, he had wanted his own career, and she had discouraged this. So she saw his moodiness as, he wants a job. I don't want him to have a job. This is causing a big problem for us. It seems Sunny recognized her husband's desire to work and have a career, but was unwilling to be supportive in that facet, preferring him to stay home. She had mentioned divorcing him, so he would be restrained from, so he wouldn't be restrained from having a professional life. Now, I think it's easy to see that Sunny would rather divorce Klaus than simply let him pursue a goal.
Yeah, that says something about Sunny as far as the control and things like that. She would go to that extreme instead of just saying, yeah, maybe we need more space, or, it seems like she doesn't, if it's true about
she's not willing to bend
right
on this, and he's given her 12 years of being by her side. So, I don't know, doesn't it seem reasonable that maybe Sunny would be more flexible or willing to compromise?
Well, you would think so. And if you're willing to, have this lack of intimacy and sleep in separate rooms or beds or whatever for years on end, is it the end of the world if he travels now and again for work? You know what I mean? It's kind of weird.
But when it came to the money, Sunny basically told her lawyer, like, I don't care about the tax. I don't care about the tax part.
I don't care what's best.
Put this money aside for him. Like, don't put it into any kind of investment or weird trust or nonprofit or anything like that. Like, we'll deal with the tax side of it, but I want to make sure he has this money.
Okay.
Now, her trust lawyer would later say that the rumors circulating that Klaus was trying to kill Sunny would prompt him to quickly end the plot if he was given money. So he also felt like it's a good idea to put this money aside for Klaus, and then maybe he won't try to kill Sunny.
Okay. That's kind of weird.
Which doesn't really make sense to me, but okay.
Well, I guess their thought is if getting money is his motivation, if he has this other money, he stops wanting to kill her, which is kind of weird.
Right? On December 1st of 1980, Sunny woke up feeling ill. Her sinuses were troubling the woman, and she opted to stay in bed all day. Maria had looked after Sunny most of the day, but when Klaus came home that evening, he took over. Around 10:30 p.m., Klaus fetched Maria and was like, you need to come see this. Sunny was lying in bed with a blood-soaked pillow underneath her head, and there was some blood on the carpet near the bed. Now, Maria couldn't figure out what had happened, but Claus called 911. Sunny was treated for aspirin toxicity and given stitches to the head. She was transferred to intensive care where she moaned, "I'll never see my children again. I'll never see my husband again," with slurred speech. So this makes me think Sunny was suicidal.
Well, it sounds like an overdose of aspirin,
Yes.
which thins your blood out. And if she was to fall and hit her head or something, she'd bleed profusely. And what's interesting in this whole situation, there's almost this cloud of suspicion around Claus by the staff, family members, and almost everyone in that household. And but at the same time, I mean, that would just be a very strange atmosphere to live in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When Sunny did return to her senses finally, she recalled having taken a large dosage of aspirin for her sinuses, but couldn't remember anything else. So one assumes that she had fallen, and that's how she got that wound to her head. Aspirin in excess damages the memory center. Claus told the family doctor that Sunny had been upset over her daughter's recent miscarriage. Some thought he was implying that this meant Sunny was suicidal. Claus then told the doctor he wanted a divorce from Sunny, but didn't think she was able to withstand the stress. The doctor thought this was further plotting against Sunny and that she could absolutely handle a divorce, and told Claus, I think she could handle a divorce. This seems to me that there's a lot of people out there that don't like Claus by now and are just looking for reasons to blame him for Sunny's actions. Because if I recall, she ended up taking something like 70 aspirin.
Yeah,
That's not like I have a sinus headache I'm trying to get rid of.
No.
There is an intention behind 70 aspirin.
Dude, you can't take 70 of anything.
Right?
Right?
I mean, I've never taken 70 of anything.
I would be scared.
Maybe like 70 M&Ms.
Even if
in
I
my mouth.
take, something that I'm not feeling good all day and I take it 2 or 3 times in that day, according to directions, I'm start getting nervous. You know what I mean? I mean,
Right.
really. That's just a big double handful of damn pills.
That's like a whole bottle of pills.
And anyone has to know that's not good for you.
December 20th, the family went to Clarendon Court to celebrate the holiday season. The family had dinner early that evening so they could see the movie 9 to 5 at the theater in town, the Dolly Parton film.
Yeah.
I love that movie. Sunny complained of a headache, but was in good spirits. She didn't eat much dinner, but then asked her butler to bring her a large vanilla ice cream with caramel sauce. So she wanted a sundae. And then she asked the cook to keep the jars of sauce for the sundae in the refrigerator in case she wanted more later. So later, a lawyer will ask her daughter, "Why did you let her eat that sundae?" And her daughter, Alla, will say, "I didn't know my mom wasn't supposed to eat sweets." When the family returned to the house after watching the movie, Claus went to the study to do some work. Sunny and the children sat in the study talking for a bit. Sunny then went upstairs to change and returned with a glass of something that her son thought was ginger ale because she had a table set up in her room with such beverages. In the next half hour, Sunny was having conversations with her kids, and that's when her speech distortions began, much like the year before. Since the family had been together for the past 3.5 hours, an opportunity for an injection of insulin, which would later come up, they think that could have been potentially what happened to her, but it would have been impossible because there was no time really, except for when Sunny went upstairs to change, that someone could have injected her.
Because they were all together all evening.
Yeah, unless she injected herself. So keep that in mind. Now, some speculate that Sunny gave herself an injection, while others surmise it was Claus who did it. Sunny's speech rapidly deteriorated, and she was too weak to hold the ginger ale. Her voice grew faint, and that's when her kids asked if she had taken a barbiturate of some kind. She said no. Then they suggested it was time for Sunny to go to bed. So she gets up, staggers, and almost falls. Her son carries her to the bedroom. She then went into the bathroom, and at some point, during this time, Claus is on the phone with someone from American Express about a business deal. So, like, the whole time this is happening, he's doing business stuff.
He has no idea.
He has no idea. Alexander interrupted the call to say that Sunny was weak and feeling unwell. Alexander left Sunny in her bedroom with the windows open because she liked the cold air while she was underneath an electric blanket. So he's got her in there feeling a little bit more comfortable. By this point, Claus has gotten off the telephone. He's kind of hanging out with Sunny while she's in bed. Alexander then went out with friends to drink at the Clark Cookhouse, which was some kind of bar in Newport. Now, if Alexander was so worried about his mother and suspected his stepfather of wrongdoing, many wonder why he would leave his mother in this condition behind with a man intent on harming her. Doesn't really add up.
No, that doesn't add up really at all. And you just saw your mother kind of deteriorate in front of your eyes. So, suspicion aside, you might be worried about your mom, just what's wrong with her. Is she going to be okay? She's been in and out of the hospital a few times. So, yeah, I mean, that's a bit odd, but he's also a young man. So they're not always have the most responsible thoughts or priorities. But I think if you add on top of that the suspicions that maybe this, Claus isn't good for your mom or could
He's
possibly
trying to kill
be
your
out
mother.
to harm her, then I think that's pretty ridiculous or ludicrous that you left and went drinking with friends, which you've probably done 1,000 times,
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really add up for me. And when he's asked about this, Alexander can't offer up a specific reason for going out.
Right.
Or why he didn't stay home, though he thinks Claus is responsible. Claus awoke around 5 a.m., but Sunny was still asleep. Claus let the dogs out, showered, went out for a walk, came back, and read the paper. He then had an hour-long business call, continuing the one that had been interrupted the night before. It was around 11 a.m. that Alexander woke up and was told his mother was still sleeping. Claus was walking in from the beach with the 4 dogs when Alexander entered into the breakfast area. Cosima was eating breakfast, and when Alexander asked about their mother, Claus seemed surprised that she wasn't awake yet and went to check on her. Now, they were supposed to be returning to New York City on this day, and typically when they were planning to return back to the New York apartment, Sunny would be up very early. So about 10 or 15 minutes, goes by while Claus is gone, and then he returns and motions for Alexander to come with him, and then he will later say that he didn't want to upset Cosima, but something was wrong. He led his stepson into the master bedroom and then into the bathroom. Sprawled across the pink tile floor was Sunny. Her nightgown was pushed up to her underpants, and her head was under the toilet. She was unconscious, had urinated on the floor, and water was running in the basin. So, the sink is on.
So this is a disturbing scene.
Yes. She was still breathing. She was cold, and she did have a busted up lip where she had fallen. Claus told Alexander to put a blanket over her. He was going to go call for help. Sunny was taken to the hospital, where it became clear that this time she had suffered severe enough brain injury to produce a persistent vegetative state.
Oh, my God.
Although clinical features resembled a drug overdose, some of the laboratory evidence suggested hypoglycemia. Sunny was transported to a Boston hospital where doctors told Claus she had a 50-50 chance of living. And when he's given this news, Claus burst into tears. It was a very dramatic scene. Because of the increased marital tensions between Claus and Sunny Von Bulow in the fall of 1980, her children were suspicious that her brain injury was the result of foul play by him. Her 2 eldest children persuaded Richard H. Q., the former New York district attorney, to investigate the possibility that Claus Von Bulow had attempted the murder of their mother. After the gathering of evidence, Rhode Island prosecutors presented the case to a grand jury who returned an indictment, and in July of 1981, Claus was charged with 2 counts of attempted murder.
Damn.
The Court of Appeal ordered disclosure of the notes taken by the Augsburg children's attorney. Now, these showed that Claus Von Bulow did not want to terminate life support, although the family, the kids, the maid, everyone had alleged that Claus right away wanted to terminate Sunny's life support.
Right. I figured that would be brought up.
But the notes, they did not show that at all. So the children told everyone that Claus wanted to end Sunny's life support because of the cost of care, and that she just didn't have enough money to maintain.
Which seems unreasonable.
Right.
She has plenty of money.
Exactly. Now, during the investigation, police discovered that Claus had been having an affair with a former soap opera actress. The actress testified that she had issued Claus an ultimatum date that closely corresponded to the date of Sunny's first coma. Many believe the circumstances surrounding both of Sunny's comas undeniably implicated Claus. The main medical and scientific evidence against him was that Sunny had low blood sugar, common in many conditions, but a blood test showed a high insulin level. Now, this test was not repeated, so there's really no way to know for sure if that's the case, because
there's not other example.
We don't have anything to compare it to.
So all we know is she had low blood sugar and a high insulin content, right? And what they're talking about is insulin poisoning.
Yes.
This is a thing. It has been used before by people to kill other people. So I guess what is the deal? Your body produces insulin naturally. Is that right?
Yes.
To control your blood sugar, right? That's the whole point. Is it? I think.
Yes.
Something to do with blood sugar. And I apologize to anyone who deals with the diabetes or the hypoglycemia, any of that. I'm not making fun of it. I don't fully understand it is all. But you can have too much insulin in your blood.
Yes,
right?
You can have not enough, or you could have too much.
Right, and both of those are dangerous situations. And her being unresponsive or groggy or appearing intoxicated. Now I do know that those are common in people who have insulin issues, even to the point where cops have thought someone was drunk as hell, not listening to them when they were truly in a medical emergency. Right.
Yeah, it's happened.
I've known of people that's happened to, actually. So we don't know how it's getting out of whack, but there is evidence that her insulin certainly is spiking or, acting oddly in her body, right?
Right. Now, there was a needle that was found among Claus's items that was used as evidence against him. The prosecution alleged that he had used it and a vial of insulin to try to kill his wife. So they did find a vial of insulin and a needle.
Now, my question is, was she using injectable insulin to maintain her condition?
We're going to get into more of this, Dylan.
Okay,
don't jump ahead.
Look,
We've still got
I'm
some
sorry.
story left.
Well, I've just never heard that prescribed to her along all this time that, hey, you need to, maintain your insulin yourself. So that's what I've been thinking this entire time.
Okay. So his mistress of 2 years, Alexander Isles, testified, quote, he said that they had been having a long argument, talk about divorce, that had gone late into the night. She had drunk a great deal of eggnog, and then he said, I saw her take a Seconal. And then he said that the next day she was unconscious and that he watched her knowing she was in a bad way all day and watched her. And finally, when she was at the point of dying, he said he couldn't go through with it and called the doctor and saved her life. So this discovery these items kind of became the focal point of Claus's appeal, which we're going to get into. Now, at the trial in Newport, Rhode Island, Claus Von Bulow was found guilty and sentenced to 30 years in prison. But he appealed, hiring Harvard Law School professor Alan Dershowitz to represent him. Dershowitz served as a consultant to the defense team, which was led by a guy named Thomas Puccio, who was a former federal prosecutor. Dershowitz's campaign to acquit Bulow was assisted by Jim Cramer and future New York Attorney General and Governor Elliot Spitzer, who were then Harvard Law School students. So a
Wow.
lot of big names attached to this case. Dershowitz and his team focused on the discovery of the bag containing the syringe and insulin. Sunny's family had hired a private investigator to look into her coma. Now, the private investigator was named Edwin Lambert, and he was an associate of Bulow's lawyer, which was Richard Q, this is like the family's lawyer, and was told by several family members and a maid that Claus had recently been seen locking a closet in the Newport home that had previously always been open. Now, the family hired this locksmith to drive to the mansion with the intention of picking the closet lock to find what was inside. This is when they find the key evidence.
Yeah, see, there's problems with this what's being listed as evidence.
Okay.
There's significant issues.
Now, the family, meaning Maria and the two children, lied to the locksmith and told him that one of them owned the house.
Okay.
When the three arrived, the locksmith insisted that they try again to find the key. And after some searching, Q, who was the prosecutor that they had gone to and were like, we've got to get a grand jury indictment. We got to do something about this. So this attorney happens to find the key in Claus Von Bulow's desk that unlocked the closet. At this point, according to the three men in the original interviews, the locksmith was paid for the trip and left before the closet was actually opened, although the men would later recant that version and insist that the locksmith was present when they entered the closet.
Yeah, because they just lost their third-party objective witness to this.
That they could have possibly planted evidence?
Now, is the very prosecutors in on this search of this at this house at this moment?
Supposedly, yeah. He's like the family attorney. He's the prosecutor, right? They're feeding him this information and getting him to pursue this case. There's a lot.
There's a lot.
It's problematic.
Well, the biggest problem with this evidence is a chain of custody. The proof of chain of custody, how it was it discovered after a warrant? I mean, there is a lot of problems with this.
It was in the closet that the main evidence against Claus Von Bulow was found, meaning the needle, the insulin. But there's no way of knowing whether it was planted or if they actually discovered it there.
Well, that's the problem. That's the problem right there.
In 1984, the two convictions from the first trial were reversed by the Rhode Island Supreme Court. In 1985, after a second trial, Claus Von Bulow was found not guilty on all charges. At the second trial, the defense called 8 medical experts, all university professors, who testified that Sunny's 2 comas had not been caused by insulin, but by a combination of ingested, not injected drugs, alcohol, and chronic health conditions. The experts were John Caroma, who was chairman of neurology at Cornell, Leo Dal Corvito, former president of the U.S. Toxicology Association, Ralph DeFranzo, who was a professor of medicine at Yale University, Kurt Dubowski, a forensic pathologist from the University of Oklahoma, Daniel Foster, who taught medicine at the University of Texas at Austin, Daniel First, a medicine professor at the University of Iowa, and Harold Leibovitz, director of clinical research at the State University of New York.
Jesus, this is like a dream team of experts, dude.
Oh, we've got more. Vincent Marks, a clinical biochemistry vice president of the Royal College of Pathologists and president Association of Clinical Biochemistry, and a man named Arthur Rubinstein, who was a medical professor at the University of Chicago. So they've got a lot of experts. You know, we were talking last episode about these so-called, experts. But
Right.
I would say these are some true experts.
Well, they truly sound like experts in their field. They're credentialed. They're PhD doctors who not only have PhDs. They're actively working at university. Directing. All sound like very important people. And I'm amazed that they can actually get all of them on board at one time to just one case, which leads me to believe that this has some notoriety to it. People, after the first conviction, that people have looked into this themselves and felt strongly about certain issues, aspects of the case. Would you agree, maybe?
Yeah. So Cortivo testified that the hypodermic needle tainted with insulin on the outside, but not on the inside, would have been dipped in insulin, but not injected. Injecting it through flesh would have wiped it clean. Evidence also showed that Sunny's hospital admission 3 weeks before her final coma showed she had ingested at least 73 aspirin tablets, a quantity that could have been self-administered, which indicated her state of mind. Dershowitz, in his book Taking the Stand, writes about Claus Von Bulow's dinner party after he was found not guilty at his trial. Dershowitz replied to the invitation that he would not attend if it was a victory party, and Von Bulow assured him that it was just a dinner for some interesting friends. Now, this is kind of a funny story. The author Norman Mailer also attended the dinner, where Dershowitz explained why the evidence pointed to Bulow not having attempted to murder his wife. As Dershowitz recounted this story, Mailer grabbed the arm of his wife, Norris Church Mailer, and said, quote, "Let's get out of here. I think this guy's innocent. I thought we were going to have dinner with a man who actually tried to kill his wife. This is boring."
What the hell? Okay.
So this case was boosted into the public's consciousness by the second trial, which was televised. And the best-selling book Reversal of Fortune was released. And there was also a film starring Glenn Close and Jeremy Irons of the same title, Reversal of Fortune.
I could totally see Jeremy Irons playing. Was he playing Klaus?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I love this movie. I remember watching this movie as a kid, and it really, this case has always stuck with me.
Yeah.
Because of that movie. And it was always one of those where I kind of thought I knew what happened, but once I started researching it, I'm not sure. So, of course, Reversal of Fortune, the film, the book, focuses on the efforts of Klaus's defense team to get his conviction overturned. So it's more about Dershowitz and his team trying to overturn the original sentence. But it's a great movie. I believe Jeremy Irons won an Oscar for his performance. Definitely recommend checking it out if you've never seen it.
I need to see it.
Sunny Von Bulow lived almost 28 years in a persistent vegetative state, from December of 1980 until her death in a New York City nursing home on December 6th of 2008. Claus Von Bulow died on May 25th, 2019 at his home in London, England. Cosima Von Bulow was cut out of her grandmother's will, disinheriting a fortune for siding with her father. She never believed her father was responsible for trying to murder Sunny.
Wow.
Author Truman Capote. Now, this is where things get interesting, Dylan. Author Truman Capote, who was often known for his celebrity gossip and unabashed truthfulness, said Sunny Von Bulow was an alcoholic who injected herself with drugs, including Demerol and amphetamines. He said her drug problems extended back to the 1950s. And in a 1982 interview, he said he certainly believed the heiress was capable of suicide. He told People magazine that he had a terrific sense of guilt for not testifying on behalf of Claus Von Bulow at his first trial. Capote gave a deposition to Von Bulow's appeal lawyers. Capote said that he and Sunny went to a bar together at New York City's Carlisle Hotel in the late 1970s, and that she had about 7 or 8 dry Manhattans to his 3 while talking about drugs. He said, quote, Sunny never liked cocaine and that she had only taken it a few times. However, there was something she did like. She called it a roller coaster. It was a mix of Demerol with amphetamines. She said she had been doing it for several years. She would also talk about grinding down Quaaludes and mixing them with water and amphetamines. He even said Mrs. Von Bulow sent him a book called Recreational Drugs, which lists every drug you can think of and describes what each dose does for you and what the maximum is that can be taken safely.
Okay.
He said Sunny's drug and alcohol problems dated back to the 50s when they had first met. Truman Capote had explained that he had gone to a doctor every day to get vitamin shots, and Sunny asked him, "Why don't you give the injections yourself?" And he said, "Well, I don't know how to do it." And Mrs. Von Bulow said, quote, "There's nothing to it. I'll teach you. I do it all the time."
Wow.
A surprise witness for the defense was a woman named Joy O'Neill of New York, and she was the first person to link the heiress with injected insulin and liquid Valium. Now, Miss O'Neill, a former ballerina, was Sunny's fitness instructor for 4 years. In late 1978, the two women were talking at a salon one day when Miss O'Neill complained that she had recently gained some weight and had been feeling very tense. Sunny told her to take a shot of insulin to lose weight and also liquid Valium to calm down. She said, quote, "It's easy to inject yourself, and the needles are very thin, and you don't feel a thing."
Wow, does insulin work like that? I need a big shot of insulin if it's going to make me not fat.
This goes along with the defense's argument that Sunny caused the coma by overindulging on sweets, alcohol, and barbiturates. It is possible to lose weight while taking insulin, Dylan, but it is not advised.
Yeah, I would say not.
Now, Dominic Dunn, a lot of folks might know him.
Man, this is like the true crimest damn story I've ever heard.
It is.
I mean, come on, Capote, Dominic Dunn, everybody.
Dominic Dunn wrote in a 1985 Vanity Fair article, quote, "Whatever one felt personally about the guilt or innocence of the man, one could not deny his charm, which was enormous in a European upper-class courtly sort of way." In 1987, Alexander and Alla filed a civil suit for $56 million against Claus Von Bulow. It was settled out of court. Von Bulow agreed to divorce the comatose woman, give up claims to her estate, and relinquish rights to make money by writing books or giving speeches about the case.
That was the settlement?
In return, Cosima would inherit 1/3 of her grandmother's estate finally, because she had been written out of the will.
Okay.
Yeah. Von Bulow said, quote, "This was a tragedy, and it satisfied all of Aristotle's definitions of tragedy. Everyone is wounded, some fatally."
Damn.
So that has been the story of Sunny and Claus Von Bulow.
So what do you think? After all that and your deep dive on this, and we really do appreciate the story you brought us, I gotta say that the evidence, of the first trial there just didn't seem to be a lot there as far as evidence that he actually intended her harm. It's a very strange story.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those cases where I'm just not sure, Dylan. Going into the case, having watched the film and all of that, I always assumed that Claus was guilty.
Right.
He was having an affair. He was after her money. But after putting in the time, reading the books, coming through old newspaper articles, interviews, I don't think he did it.
It almost seems like a guy who, and she, Sunny, was a big kind of liked to be in control. I won't call her control freak, but she liked to be in control and direct things. Maybe used to things going her way, and it seems like she didn't want to give anyone space to do anything, do what they wanted. And, I mean, just Capote's statement alone, if any of that's true, that just turns the rest of it on her head, on its head, as far as, she never hardly drinks, doesn't do drugs and all that, because that's exact opposite of what he's saying.
Right.
And that was, he was someone who enjoyed his libations and maybe getting high, Capote, right? He didn't mind hanging out and having a good time.
Oh, he was a party guy.
Right. And for him to be like, she was kind of teaching him, if you will, or telling him about these different things. That mixing, if that's true, amphetamines with Demerol or something like that, that's speedballing. That's just no different than mixing coke and heroin, right? Your body's trying to go in two separate directions, up, down, and would be a very unhealthy thing to do.
Well, we'll never know the truth.
No.
what really went down. So at this point, it is all, speculation, but just based on the evidence, the information that is available, I'm not entirely sold that Claus Von Bulow was responsible for Sunny's coma or that he tried to kill her. It does seem to me that perhaps Sunny did have some depression or at least had some social anxiety, as you mentioned, maybe agoraphobia, something like that. And her family, her kids, her maid, they don't entirely seem to me like the most honest people.
No, I mean, it certainly
Like
seems...
some of their own behavior is very shady.
Well, and it seems possibly like they were more worried about what people thought and reputations, which you shouldn't worry about any of that when you're talking about someone's personal or mental health. So, yeah, very interesting story. I did not know it in depth like this. And it's really a bit mysterious.
It is very mysterious, but there's just so much money and social status involved in the story. It just seems like a different world.
Yeah.
From the one that we live in.
Yeah, it's like Dwayne and them.
You can't even
it's a different world.
Wrap your head around the kind of money these people had.
Okay, so that is it for this week, Heather. And if people would like to get another taste of Mount Murders and they've run out of stuff to listen, what can they do to fix that?
Well, you can head over to patreon.com/Mountain Murders Podcast. And for as low as $1 a month, you can sign up to be a patron. We have tons of bonus content, lots of true crime. We have some cryptid stories, ghost stories. We have all sorts of interesting content at Patreon. And you can get an invite to our Discord chat.
Yes, and every episode is ad-free experience.
Ad-free as well. That is absolutely correct, Dylan. If you have a case suggestion, something you would like to hear, or have feedback about this case, you can always email us, mountainmurderspodcast@gmail.com. This was a very lengthy episode. Thanks for sticking it out. And sometimes I do get a little tongue-tied when we have a very long episode. So I always appreciate your patience.
Yo, mush mouth
I just
bitch.
leave all the fuck-ups in here because, you guys know we're the real deal.
Yeah, we're not hoe to copy.
We're not editing this shit.
This isn't an inspirational podcast. Oh, right quick, I'll say me and Heather are laughing, kind of laugh about all these big networks and shows, are now doing a podcast, and it's like, but they're like they're just flipping over that same bullshit they've been doing for years on network TV that no one wants to hear anymore into a podcast.
Well, we get tickled because, of course, we're like all other true crime folks, and we listen to a lot of the Dateline podcasts.
Well, you have
which
to.
are basically just the TV show,
the audio
from the TV show,
right?
But they always have the commercial in there about the Today Show is now a podcast. And we're like, who the fuck's listening to that?
I'm just imagining if someone...
I feel like the people who might watch the Today Show are not the same folks who are listening to a podcast.
That's the problem.
It's like, sorry, dude, it's the wrong generation.
It is. And then they just go from there. They got these 50 million podcast of
I mean, maybe there are people who are not like 100 years old that are watching the Today Show or Good Morning America. Fuck if I know.
Maybe.
But to me, that is so boring. And the only person I know who'd be watching the Today Show is like my damn grandma who's, like 90.
Well, we are true crime fans and podcast fans. I listen to all kinds of different genres. And, but, and sometimes I go with the polished, heavily produced, but a lot of times I don't. I find someone I find interesting who's, starting out with just a little bit of equipment and kind of, improves a little here and there, but still has that kind of unpolished feel to it.
Well, that's what I like because I feel like that's what podcasting
yes.
started out as, and more of what it should be is giving independent broadcasters a voice.
Yeah.
And the just over-polished, well-produced stuff kind of gets a little boring to me. It usually is very dry.
It is. It's unlike this very incredible podcast that you just listened to.
Yeah.
Known as Mountain Murders.
Okay.
So I'm going to put little Heather to bed. I think we broke her little brain today.
You did.
It's late, and we appreciate everyone, and we will catch you next week.